Good day, YouTubers. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from all around the world. We are working on decorations again this week. Got these pewter pieces with arms and legs that we had to glue on. And of course the horsey there was in two halves. We got those all glued up and glued these legs and arms on. I'm going to save that one there because it's like this one here. It reaches up to the back of the horse's head, and I think it's going to conflict with installation later on. And according to the drawing, they're showing that installation, of course, after we paint it and everything, that other half will mount over here. And I was worried because we've got these other pieces that are gonna go on there. So we've glued on two little stirrups here that are gonna key into. So this is the left side, the back. These little stirrups that are sticking out there we glued on are going to key into these little notches that are here. And other than the bottom part, something like that, they're going to key in there. I got to do some filing and stuff to them, and then later on I imagine something will attach to that side. But something like that it's going to install, just clearing the back of these figures. So obviously before we can mount those, we've got to do all the brass decorations that are going to mount to these pieces. And there's a whole bunch of them. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. O is the last one, and they fill in all these places on there. So we got a lot of fitting and gluing. And painting before we can install those. Let me see how they key in there. And then the figurine goes on. With that just behind the wings of or the hair of that lady or something there. There's one more piece of pewter I got to get out that goes right on the top in the middle before we go on to something else. But yesterday I glued up all these ones except for that one arm because I think it's going to be a issue when I go to put them on later. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get all these ready before I put these figurines on. I got to paint these gold. This one will key in to the side of that one. You can see the keyway there. So I'm going to paint and glue and trim all these little spurs sticking out. We got to trim and get them glued on in the right spot, because each one of them is labeled A through O, and each one of them has a designation of location that it goes. And we want to make sure we get the right one in the right spot. So I'm going to do one side at a time and then do the other side. Try to keep these in order as I go. A, B, C. So C's on the bottom, A's on the top. And then we last one, O is on the bottom. So got to watch that close and get these installed. Okay, so we got all those little pieces glued on in the right spot, and it was like a puzzle. I thought that the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O was in order, but no. It almost seemed like it was backwards. I ended up, after the first piece that seemed to fit properly, the second and the third wanted to go over there instead of over here. So I thought maybe I was on the wrong one, and took the little key things out and put them on the other side and flipped it over, and it got worse. So after messing with it for a while, put the key things back in the right side where they were originally, and swapped the two groups, because my board that I'm punching them out of is labeled right side and left side. But I don't know, something got messed up somewhere, and well, I got them all in there in the right spot, I hope. At least it looks right. So now we're going to go on to doing some painting before we install these things, and I'm not sure what goes in this middle spot where the wood is at. We'll just wait until we proceed with what directions we have. And yeah, they're not showing anything in there yet either, so there's probably more decorations that go on in those spots later on. Yeah, that's it right there. There's some of them decorations, and they'll probably go into a little hole that's on there. So we might as well get those out and paint them too, eh? Yeah, let's go find all those. Try to get those painted up too at the same time we're painting all this stuff here. I gotta look at those real close and see. Looks like it might be these right here. Okay. Okay, I think we got all the pieces that we need for that front painted. Not sure about this one here, but everything else I am. So once those dry, yeah, this screen's got too much. When I had the blue out, I went ahead and did these corners like it was supposed to. Oh, and something else I did first thing yesterday for this week is install these high bolts and rings directly behind each one of the cannons per the plans. This one's glued down though, no. We're going to have to check all these, make sure we can put a rope on them. But I used that brass black. Oops. And I'm going to have to glue that back on. I think I need to use E6000 on that instead of super glue. I got a couple of these left over that I made up. But I got all those drilled in. There's a 1/2 millimeter drill bit to install them in some super glue. Let's get this glued back on. But the brass black worked pretty good with that after I made them up, because I had to open up that eye bolt to get that ring on there. So I just clamped each eye bolt in the vise, pried it open, put the ring on there. Luckily I didn't lose any. I got some left over that we'll probably use somewhere else. But the secret was to pull this out, so if I dropped an eye bolt or a loop on one of them rings, I could find it. Man, oh man, if I drop it down there. I was down on my knees a couple times saying, oh, I got to figure out some way to do that different so I don't lose them. Because I had just enough rings. I ended up going in the old kit, some leftover parts from the San Juan or the Bounty, in order to get enough, because I was lacking like 4 of them. So, but I was able to find some. So once these pieces dry, before we go on to this big divot for the anchor in the front of the boat, we'll try to get all this stuff done. There's a bunch of fancy little details of ribbons that hang behind one of those ladies that's hanging out there in the middle of the open. You can see her hanging out there. And there's a little bit of wood pieces they want us to make, I guess, to mount the back of her too, so she's got something to mount to. And I think that's one of them right there. Is the other one. So we'll precariously go through those before we go on to the divot. all that stuff's going to mount up here, so it's going to be fun. Man, talk about stressful. Just getting everything to fit. These three, the horse and the two ladies. I think we're really close. I just glued on that other arm that I was worried about. And where these decorations come together from way back here, I had to take the Dremel and cut away on this grading deck on both sides. You can see the little bit of a tear out there. But I had to do that in order to get these things to come together enough so that it didn't impede the way these ladies' legs and their lower part of their body is rubbing against it on the outside, in order for them to mate up to the horse in the middle. So I did finally get that cut away enough where I still had enough room to get these pieces here at the top to come together enough so I could put this centerpiece on. So a little cleanup work to do, but I think I got her in there centered. The horse is centered. I got these rubber bands on there to hold this lady. When we first started, didn't want to fit on there at all because these frame pieces were sticking out too far. You can see where she pushes against it. Both of them do. So once I cut that deck away a little bit, and this other bowsprit frame member in the middle, enough where these would come together so that I could glue this up E6000, and I put some rubber bands on there to help hold the position while that E6000 dries. Man, that was stressful getting it all to fit, but it fits. So once that dries, and of course back here, before I go on to the next thing, the instructions want me to make this little standoff bracket on both sides, and we did that at first with some 2 5mm boards and gluing them together and then cutting an angle on them. Well, the 5mm boards, even though they were gonna work, was gonna be a pain in the butt. So I went ahead and got a piece of solid plywood out of my scrap. Just took some scrap stuff from the laser cut sheets and took some measurements with the piece sitting here in the front and in the back, and then used that calipers to get an idea of where this distance is and this distance is, so I could create that angle, and then duplicated that for the second piece so it sticks out a little further than the plans show. But and both sides aren't the same. You can see this side's almost touching and this one's got a little gap, but you can only do so much to get everything to fit. So I got that all glued up. And now we can look at putting on these decorations that we painted yesterday that go in this area. So take a little break and eat some breakfast. And this morning I did do the gold detail on that blue piece. I think that blue piece goes right there in front of that horse. So we will have to let all this dry and decide what we're going to do with the color there. We may just do black on that or something. Whew. Okay, we're a little further along, but not as far as we want to be. Something's holding us back. Might be gas. Now we're getting down to these last few pieces of decoration for the instructions. And we got this one little frilly ribbon that is going to hang out there somewhere around her. I got to figure that out. But we did finish all the other pieces and got them hanging. And I'm working on putting them ribbons on underneath these frames here. And we had a little bit of a bend we got to put on them to make them fit up in there right. And now we got that ribbon that I guess she's holding the end of it. And it loops up behind her or something. I got to understand what they're doing there with that last piece. Because it doesn't really make sense. And that's the last photograph. So we got to see some other pictures. There is other pictures in the CD here that show the completed model. We got to look at those and figure out what this piece is doing. So we found a photograph. I could start right above that gun port behind her, up behind her arm, and then coming out in the front and dead ending right there at the bottom of that circle. So we got to bend it a little bit to fit there and make it lay flat up here. And loop down. Yeah, it's going to be a little tricky to get it to be in the right spot. Her hand might be, yeah, it should be underneath her hand instead of on top. So we got to make it go underneath there and come up. So we'll tweak and bend and see if we can get that to place in the right spot. But I found the photographs in the CD, and I'm trying to get them to load into my photo program on Windows 10. But even though it opens them, the copies that I have in there don't open. That doesn't make any sense. So it must be a different file format. Well, at least we can open them and see. There's like 20 photographs here of the completed ship that we got to work with. So good morning. Did you come in to visit? You want some bird seed? So we got some divots made up to hoist up the anchor. We got to paint these little things gold and put them on the end there. And then I'm working on some stairways, gluing them up. Each one of these steps has got to be cleaned up. And we got to paint the railing blue. So the plans show this sticking out here, which means we got to cut that railing off, or that post, and then it rests on top of this figurine as it's coming out. So we got to do that on both sides, get that post cut off at the right spot, and then supposedly that'll rest on there on top of that. That's going to be a little tricky. These aren't exactly the same height, but we'll figure it out. I painted them up yesterday, so oil base is still a little tacky. Okay, we got some divots on and the stairs on. And then I looked way forward in the prints because I wanted to see what to do with them wires. So there's going to be two little houses up here, one here and one here, and this one will have a lid you can take off so you can replace the batteries. I think that's where the battery box will go for those LED lights on the back of the ship. So our little stairways, got the railings painted up. What I did here was put them wires in a little box. So there's a piece of 2x2 millimeter walnut, and then a space behind there, and then this piece of thin deck board stained and glued down on top of it. That was a lot easier than what we did over here. And I drilled some holes, got them down in there and fished them out. So hopefully the wire is going to be long enough, but it's long enough to stick out so we can make it longer if we solder something on there. So yeah, there's the battery box, so that should fit down in there vertically. Hold the cells. And the divots, they're still drying, but we notched out the little piece of running board there to get those to fit right. The only thing I don't like about the divots is the space here above this decoration that's supposed to be on it, but we were lucky to get all these decorations done this week, along with a bunch of more. So all 8 of the stairways are done and on. I had to move these 2 cannonball boxes. There's 4 of them to accommodate the stairways, but got everything in there. The next thing in the prints is starting to do some framework for the things to hold the dead eyes on the outside edge of the ship. Installing those and gluing them up and making them for all 3 masts. That's what we'll work on next week, is getting some of those pieces done for the outside of the ship to hold the dead eyes in the shrouds. Well, we made really good progress this week. Thanks for watching.